Hello traders and welcome back in a new week ahead video. This is Mohanad Yakout, Senior Market Analyst at Scope Markets, and today is the beginning of a new trading week, Monday the 24th of August. Basically, we are beginning a really important week for markets. We have a couple of things to look at for, mainly as mentioned on the screen. We do have Nvidia earnings coming up for the second quarter of the year 2026. That would be on the coming Wednesday. We also have the US PCE data, especially after the recent, disinflation in the last report. Markets are pretty much looking to this one. Will we see continued disinflation theme that should probably affect what's to come for the FOMC? And lastly, we will be watching for the Jackson Hole and the first appearance of Kevin Walsh as the head of or the Federal Reserve Chairman in Jackson Hole. And although basically Kevin Walsh doesn't really like to provide any forward guidance to markets, markets will still be pretty much focusing so much on any clues or hints that could be included in the speeches that could affect markets. So pretty tough economic agenda for this week. We will also have a look on the technical analysis on the key levels, supply and demand zones that we should have on our charts to prepare for the week ahead. Stay tuned. Let's have a quick look on the economic agenda here. And basically today on Monday, and it's not really on the economic agenda here as one of the high ticket events, although I do believe it should be there, is that today we are expecting a speech from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, about what's been happening in markets, especially the intervention in the bond markets last week, raising the buyback operations limit from $2 billion to $4 billion, and how it affected the US dollars and the treasury yields. Markets will be looking for the speech today for any kind of forward guidance on future interventions in the bond market. We all know that this is some sort of a really short-term pain relief or short-term band-aid. However, how markets will be reacting to those moves is key to watch, and how Besant will mention this to the press and media is also something that we'll be looking for today. Moving on to Tuesday, tomorrow, we only have the meeting minutes from the RBA's last meeting, and we also have the business climate in the German economy. Moving on to Wednesday, basically this is one of the important days, or basically the most important day during the week. We do have the PCE data, or the personal consumption expenditures, the inflation metric that's the best in the eyes of the Federal Reserve. Basically, in the month of June, we have seen this inflation back to 3.7 and 3.4% on both the headline figure and the core figure. Markets will want to see, will this disinflation theme continue to July or not? I really question this, because in June, basically, oil prices were down. However, in July, we have seen again higher prices. So I don't really expect inflation prices to come lower. Maybe around the same levels or even a bit higher is my personal expectations. We also have the durable goods orders. We have the GDP for the second quarter of this year, 2026. That's the second estimate. And the personal income as well. At the end of Wednesday's session, after the US stock market close, we will have Nvidia's earnings. Of course, markets are expecting a little bit higher than what Nvidia itself expects. So expectations for the revenues are around 91.7 billion. However, markets will not accept anything lower than 93, probably to $95 billion for this quarter. Earnings per share is again expected to move higher. It's all about how well, Nvidia can prove to investors that it's still able to generate revenues after, the huge capex that we have seen during the past 2 years. So this is really important to watch. Either we can see an extension to the upward moves on the US indices, or probably if the numbers fail to impress investors, we can see a leg lower and a retracement. Moving on to Thursday, we only have the consumer confidence for the German economy. And on Friday, one of the key things to look for, apart from Jackson Hole, and Warsh speech, we will also have the non-farm payroll annual revision. The past year, we have seen 911,000 jobs being adjusted in the annual revision. So markets will pretty much want to see the previous year. Have we seen any, you know, are there any adjustments and how much? This is something also markets will be looking for. And I definitely expect this to affect the overall sentiment in the market and, of course, somehow influence the Federal Reserve decisions coming next. Let's have a look on technical analysis here and starting with the dollar index. Of course, on Wednesday of last week, we have seen this huge bearish move that broke below the previous support level of around 99.25. Right now, I do expect a move higher on the dollar index just to start the week with a kind of an upward retracement following the bearish week that we have seen. However, my eyes will be on the 99.25 points level as a resistance. So after moving higher, if we have seen any bearish price action emerge around those levels 99.25, I really expect this downward move to happen during the week. The same goes for the euro versus the dollar. However, on the opposite side, again, the euro has benefited basically from a weaker dollar during the past week. During the beginning of today's trading week, I do expect this downward retracement to continue down a little bit, and the possible buying areas for me are basically the 50 and the 6180 Fibonacci levels. That's around 1.1640 and the 1.1620 roughly. We'll just be waiting for a confirmation price action. Any bullish signals that we get from price action, and I do expect again a move higher to at least the previous high and even as well as high to 1.1765. When it comes to the pound versus the dollar, it's basically neutral for me at the moment because we are still pretty much trading inside a huge supply zone. On the short time frame, on the 1 hour specifically, yes, there seems to be kind of a top formation here. Prices are trying to form a top formation. So one of the ideas that you can have for the pound during the beginning of this week is basically after a break and a close below the 1.3622, we can expect to see a minor retracement lower, probably to 1.3570 or 1.3550 zone. However, this is just a brief minor correction. We are still inside a pretty much big supply zone, so we will have to wait for confirmation on this pair during the week. Of course, gold is surging way higher, which is something that we have discussed in previous videos. So a break above this falling wedge is basically it was a buying opportunity, and the first target should be around the 4740. We have pretty much seen this upward move, sideways ranges, retracements, and then another swing higher. I do really expect gold prices to move higher this week to 4740. Of course, on the slower or the lower time frames, we can expect to see some maybe probable minor corrections. However, the upward or the trend remains to the upside, and any retracement should be a really good buying opportunity. The targets should be around 47.40. When we discuss and look at the oil prices here, given the current stalemate position when it comes to the geopolitical tensions, we have seen what looks like a minor double top formation here. We already broke below the 86.60. So during the week, as long as we're trading below the $86.60 per barrel, I can expect to see some retracement on oil prices, maybe probably to $83 per barrel. Moving on to S&P, basically, we have seen this jump higher that was in the 4th of August. This upward jump is what we call as a path of least resistance. So that was a clean price action. When we move lower, once again, we do expect that prices move back all of this upward movement to the opposite side or move lower with no resistance or supports level uh, to stop this move. So basically, S&P right now is trading around the 76.65. I can expect to see more bearish moves. A lower move is expected. However, a slower move is also something I can expect. So I don't really expect prices to drop. I can expect prices to move a little bit slower, probably to touch the key demand levels around 76.20. Of course, we'll be waiting as well for Nvidia's earnings and the overall sentiment in markets. That was all for today's week ahead video. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll catch you guys in the next week's video. Thank you so much and stay safe.